So the last time the three of us spoke, we joked that it wasn't a Julie Andrews movie. And now we can't make that joke because it is a Julie Andrews movie, but it's also a Hitchcock movie, which means I have very little in terms of experience with Hitchcock. I have seen one other Hitchcock movie.
Which one?
Psycho. I know. And I think I've spoken to this a couple times. It was just, again, for me, it's just not something that, I don't know. It's not someone that I've had anyone ever be like, you need to watch these movies. This is a thing. Like, you have to go. Like, again, I've never had anybody do that. So at least not for Hitchcock. I'm not saying other people haven't done that. I've watched plenty of movies on suggestion before. But for me, I had never had anyone be like, you need to watch The Birds or Psycho. It's like, okay, I've been on the Universal Studios backlot tour enough times to know that Alfred Hitchcock's important. They always point him out. So I know the importance of Hitchcock, but I don't know through experience of watching the movies what is so important about Hitchcock, if that makes sense. Everyone is left by now. They're just like, he admitted immediately that he has no experience with this director and we do not care anymore. Because how dare anyone be honest as a podcaster?
I'm curious why Psycho you did find. Was it just a horror thing?
It's a horror thing. I mean, it's like, you can't have a conversation about the history of a certain kind of horror movie without Psycho coming up for a whole multitude of reasons. Slashers, the use of blood. I mean, again, just a lot. I mean, again, pushing the rating board and stuff like that. All of that. Psycho is in that conversation. So that for me is why I had seen Psycho. Again, why I didn't go and watch anything past that is kind of beyond me. It's not for a lack of wanting to watch Hitchcock or finding that the kinds of movies that he's making, like thrillers effectively, are not something I stray away from, is what I'm saying. I just, for whatever reason, Hitchcock just never, word of mouth was never suggested to me, which is kind of strange.
I think in some ways that may be generational. Like, I grew up and Hitchcock was being re-released. Hitchcock films were being re-released in even traditional theaters, right. Not all the time, but often enough that I saw more Hitchcock than I saw in a theater than I saw other classic films. And so that was more, even though he wasn't our era, he was close enough to our era that we were hearing about those films being a really important part of filmmaking history and filmmaker history.
I don't think I've ever seen any Hitchcock movie in a theater. I think my viewing experience has solely been on television. Some of them I've, and to a large extent, initially anyway, my impression of what a Hitchcock movie was probably colored by not just Psycho, but The Birds, both of which I have seen and scared the crap out of me because I'm easily scared. So, but I have seen, I certainly haven't seen them all, but I have seen a good number of them.
All right. And I've seen Psycho, Vertigo, Rear Window, The Birds, North by Northwest several times, Rear Window several times, To Catch a Thief, Rope, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and I'm sure a couple others.
The Man Who Knew Too Much, remind me which one?
It's the 50s. It's did he do it twice or it was done twice?
It was done twice.
It's not the first one. Or did he do both?
No. 1956 and 1934. Yes, he did both.
He did both. Yeah. Okay. He did both of those, which is really interesting. I think I'm sure I went through a Hitchcock. I know I did. That's when I saw them all during film school. Was like, oh, okay, I'm going down the Hitchcock lane. So I saw them both. The only one I remember would be the second one, the 56.
Of all the ones you mentioned, I know I've seen all of those except for, I'm not sure if I've seen The Man Who Knew Too Much. The title sounds familiar, but I'm not sure that I've seen it.
And some of the TV, did Alfred Hitchcock present? I saw some of those too.
I've never seen any of those. Again, they sounded scary to me, so I stayed away from them.
Short form anthology stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Kind of like the horror or the thriller version of
Tales from the Crypt,
Twilight Zone,
or Twilight Zone. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But and I really enjoy the Jimmy Stewart, Alfred Hitchcock sort of genre.
Right.
Rear Window and Vertigo, I think, are really excellent. In particular, and then North by Northwest is amazing. So that might be, I'm going to say you definitely need to watch North by Northwest and Rear Window and The Birds. I would put those all up there.
Before this? I mean, yeah.
Rope is pretty great too.
Rope is pretty great too. Rope, you have to understand, was done. I think Rope is great. It is both hindered by its conceit, which is it's all in one take, right? And I think it does a very good job with that, particularly for the time, particularly, it's really good, but it's still a little bit slower than it needs to be.
By the way, I just took a look and I have seen The Man Who Knew Too Much. So perhaps I seen the 1956.
Yeah.
Well, and so that, again, like for me, it's I was never opposed to any of these movies. I don't even actually know why I didn't see any of them. But on this episode of the Kulturecast, I am still your host, Chris Stachiw, and I'm joined by the two hosts of 80s TV Ladies, Susan Lambert Haddam.
Hello.
And Sharon Johnson.
Hello.
And we're talking about, I guess, the first time I'm doing a Hitchcock movie on this show, which, good and for bad for this movie, it has Julie Andrews in it, and it's from 1966, so it's a later Hitchcock movie, and it's called Torn Curtain.
What series of startling events could come to a climax in a scene like this?
I'm not a scientist, I'm a teacher.
You're a scientist, and you're supposed to respect a natural order in all things. Breakfast comes before lunch. Ow! And marriage should come before a honeymoon cruise.
Paul Newman and Julie Andrews find love in danger, and danger in love, when they venture behind Alfred Hitchcock's Torn Curtain.
Now, you stay away from me. Don't talk to me. When this plane lands, you take the next one out. Anywhere. Go home.
But she had to know what was happening to the man she loved.
All right, what would you like me to do?
So I'll be back in time for the wedding.
In 2 months?
Yeah.
Or 3?
Yeah.
Oh, Michael, you certainly know how to make a girl feel wanted.
Who are you?
Didn't the farmer tell you? I'm Dr. Koska.
Who is this Professor Armstrong?
Pray for him.
What possessed you to bring your girl on a job like this?
I didn't. She followed me. It'll blow up. We built it. Didn't blow up. It works.
4 years ago, we tried it on Mars. It blew up.
I love you very much. Won't you please take me home?
I'm sorry, I can't.
They found Gomek's body.
So the film is written by Willis Hall and Keith Waterhouse, directed by, like we've kind of mentioned at this point over and over and over again, Alfred Hitchcock. Screenplay by Brian Moore, and it stars Paul Newman and Julie Andrews as a scientist and his scientist girlfriend, who through, I would say, Hitchcockian ways, defect to East Berlin and then have to defect to West Berlin, or back to the other side of the Iron Curtain, as it were, through hilarious misdeeds. And again, I mean, this has got to be the Hitchcock thing, right? This
Hilarious?
is, I mean, like, again, hilarious. I mean, like, some of it's kind of wild and some of it's horrifying. But some of the things are kind of like, oh, that's kind of clever. That's kind of cute. But yeah, there's also a lot of this that's pretty brutal in a lot of ways that I was not expecting. But yeah, we're going to be spoiling the movie, obviously, and it's the kind of movie where spoilers matter. It's a thriller, so just a heads up, if you want to watch this movie, go and watch it. And then come back and listen to this episode because you're going to have the entire movie spoiled for you. So, Susan, I'm going to kick it to you first. Why are we watching this movie? Because I believe that is this yours? This is, I think, a suggestion that is combined, all of ours, maybe? I don't remember.
I think it was combined, all of ours. I think it came out of having introduced you to Julie Andrews. You're welcome.
Thank you.
We were talking about what else Julie Andrews could we see, and then we were talking about her having done a Hitchcock movie with Paul Newman, which I had never seen, and that was like, how did I not see this in my Hitchcock dive? And so I think I was excited about it for that reason. Sharon?
I recall that I was the one that brought it up because I have seen it before, and just based on initial comments, probably enjoyed it a lot more than perhaps the two of you did. We'll see. But yeah, I saw it, many years ago, probably during whenever I was watching all sorts of older movies of that kind. And so I've known of it for some time.
So, Sharon, let's go back the other direction. Sharon, what did you think rewatching it to talk about it for this episode?
First of all, I realized some of the details of the movie I'd completely forgotten about. I thought they were married. I didn't realize that she was his fiancée.
Right.
At least I didn't recall that. Let's put it that way. But other than that, I may have forgotten some of the details, but I think that was really the only thing that I did not remember. But I didn't remember it being quite as, for lack of bloated, if you will, in terms of some of the scenes. However, for the time, that was certain. And I think looking at it now, Hitchcock was a little self-indulgent about some of that stuff, but still, it had a lot of very Hitchcockian touches to it.
By you, Susan?
I was surprised. I had never seen it. I had seen scenes from it, and so I did remember that. But I actually, and listen, I maybe end up in the middle. I'm just guessing, but because I really enjoyed many parts of this movie, there's a level of craft in Hitchcock films. The cinematography, the state, there's just some really, really wonderful stuff. I love Paul Newman. I love Julie Andrews. I don't think they're Hitchcock stars. And it's odd to say what is a Hitchcock star, but there are people he worked with over and over again, Jimmy Stewart being one of them, Cary Grant, and they met Hitchcock in the right place, or Hitchcock met them in the right place, and they work. And it's weirdly, I think, a bigger than life movie star that is the personality. Like, it's so odd that Jimmy Stewart did Hitchcock when you look at his other films. And you're like, but how is Jimmy Stewart in a Hitchcock film? How would that ever fit? But it does. It fits really well. And I don't think Paul Newman fits a Hitchcock film. I think that's the biggest problem I have. He is such a naturalistic actor. He is an amazing actor. I love so much Paul Newman, but I don't think he's a Hitchcock actor. I think he doesn't act like a star. And there's something like Julie Andrews comes off really well in this, even though, again, I'm not sure she's a Hitchcock star or Hitchcock lady, but she at least kind of understands the level of performance that's happening in a Hitchcock movie. It's a crafted movie. And I think that Paul Newman, if he understood it, wouldn't do it. And so he's just walking through this movie. That's what I think is the problem of this movie. And so, and I think there are challenges in the movie because it sort of doesn't quite hit that pace that you want from a Hitchcock film. However, there are freaking amazing scenes. There are sequences that are really, really cool. And it's just so interesting that they're engaged, but that's not even that clear. And that they're totally in bed together at the beginning of the movie. And it's 1966 and they're not married. And it's Julie Andrews, who at this point had played Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music. And so she was like the goodest good girl in the world and shows up in this movie in the first shot in bed with Paul Newman. And they are clearly have just had sex or about to have sex. And that is amazing.
It's not that I did or didn't like this movie. Okay, I'd never seen a Hitchcock movie before as the adult that I am now. So I think I do recognize that this movie is a bit long. And by a bit long, I think it's like a half an hour too long. Because there are some scenes that just seem to go on for a while. But outside of kind of the movie's pacing issues, I also realized I had really never seen Paul Newman in anything either. So there's that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. Sorry.
I see a whole string of podcasts in your future.
I know. I could sit and pretend like it's what is happening is not the truth. But again, I have no problem admitting it because the only way you watch those movies is by admitting.
But at the same time, you're a little bit younger than I am. So you have had other movies that have come along that you've been watching. And it's the further out you get, the harder it is, I think, to go back and try to catch some of that stuff of a different era because there's so much. There are only so many hours in the day, after all.
Theoretically.
Yes.
I mean, if you have something on in the background the entire time, which is, again, that's almost what it feels like now is I'm always watching something. And yeah, how I never managed to watch a Paul Newman thing or a Alfred Hitchcock thing is kind of beyond me. But to your point, I mean, if I said to someone 10 years younger than me, have you ever seen a Hitchcock movie? They'd be like, who? I'd be like, oh, shit. Like that's I think is where it is too far, is the generation one beneath me that are like in their early 20s that it's like, they don't even fucking care. Which is fine. I mean, I get it. Like, they have other things that they care about.
I mean, that's why they had to put a disclaimer on the Moonlighting episode in the 80s saying, nothing's wrong with your television. This episode is just going to turn black and white for a minute because people would freak out when there was black and white on their television sets, even in the 80s, because it was weird and different and felt old-fashioned. It is often a battle to get, if we want to sit down and watch a movie, the first question that's asked by one of our children is this in black and white? Because I'm out. And you're like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. So it does. And I saw a lot of these movies on television too. They were rerun. Like this was sort of a staple, right? Westerns and Hitchcock, Jimmy Stewart, those were staples of television, on weekends and, movie night. I wasn't living in a place that had movie revival houses, or a number of them, or at least ones I could get to that would allow me to go out and see these things in a theater. So if I wanted to watch them, I had to watch them on television. And then of course, VHS came along. So yeah, a lot of my watching actually preceded, not all of it, but some of it preceded home video. But Susan, getting back to something you said, you're reminding me that my understanding of not just film technique, but also acting styles, et cetera, is very pedestrian. I watch something, I either like it or I don't. I'm entertained by somebody or I'm not, but I don't really have an understanding of anything beyond that. I want to, but I just haven't made time or figured it out or gotten to a place where I really understand that. So that is a gap in my my video, television, movie watching that I would like to fill in somewhat. I mean, I was going to say, but I don't know if it's a gap so much as there's something wrong with me.
No, not at all.
No, but there are people that because it is stuff that, Brittany and I in film school would talk about, that Rich and I talked about in film school and still talk about today, of we're constantly breaking down scenes or films or moments of why does that work or why does that not work? And you kind of, when you're making film or theater, you're particularly as you get further into it, it becomes very, very hard not to be doing that all the time in everything you're watching. It's and so in some ways it's hard to watch it just as a consumer, right? And so there are things that people will be like, oh my God, I love this. And Richard, I'll be like, Oh, they're this and this and this. And you're like, you know what? People love what they love, and they don't all have to break it down. So just some obsessed people who want to know why things work or don't work. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that Paul Newman wouldn't work in this film, but I don't think it's the right fit.
And sometimes it just comes down to that, just whatever that fit is, as you said, whatever that thing is. I mean, for instance, sometimes I'll hear somebody say, oh, that was a really well-directed movie, or that wasn't a very well-directed movie. I have no idea what that means. I honestly don't know what that means. I just come out of the movie and go, I like it or I don't like it. There's maybe some things I can quantify or describe, but at the end of the day, I don't have that vocabulary and I don't have that understanding, and I would like to have that a little bit more at least. But that's for another podcast, perhaps.
Well, and I was about to say, like to your point, Susan, like watching movies has been ruined for me because I can't watch them the way I used to. I can't. The turning off at some point, like I was able to turn it on and off, but then when the expectation is always you're more than likely going to be having a conversation about this, you can never turn it off, and it's been turned on too many times. It just can't go back anymore, and it's fine. I mean, it does kind of suck to always be that person in a room who's like, we like this movie. It's like, what? It's like, oh, this guy, he's always there. But it's the thing, like, we're not always there. Like, there are plenty of people, like you said, that can just watch a movie and then they don't even think anything of it. I just watched a movie to watch a movie to pass the time. And I wish I could be that person more than I am now, which is like, there is very little in between. But again, when you sit and watch movies every day and end up recording more than not about something else that someone else has already made and your feelings on it, yeah, it's a lot.
Well, don't get me wrong. It's not that because usually I am the person in the corner of the room by myself feeling the totally opposite way of most of the other people in the room as they feel about some movie or television show that everybody's consumed. So that often happens to me, but so I completely understand, Chris, where you're coming from.
Yeah, it gets exhausting after a while, being like, why I didn't like Batman versus Superman. I really have to tell you, okay, fine, because you feel obligated to tell me why you loved it so much. It's like, can't you just love something, in my opinion, not fucking matter at all? Because again, that should be the way this works. At least I would think.
Well, there are a number of "quote unquote" bad movies that I like quite a lot, and other so-called good movies that I did not. That happens all the time.
Yeah,
every single time. So it is what it is.
Well, and I think in the 80s, if I had seen this when I was sort of 80s and 90s, when I was sort of studying Hitchcock and watching a lot of Hitchcock, I think I would have liked this and sort of placed it kind of in the middle, mostly because of Paul Newman and Julie Andrews, and mostly because of Julie Andrews.
She's great.
She's so great. And again, it is a completely different kind of role than what she had become super famous for. So I think that was the other thing that made it exciting, is like, wait, she did Mary Poppins, Sound of Music, Torn Curtain? Then you're like, what? And so I think it was really great to see her and to hear her. Like, I kind of went and looked up some interviews with her talking about working with Alfred Hitchcock. And she's like, it was so interesting. I just showed up and I got an education because he didn't want me to show up and do anything. Like, basically was what she's saying. And, and he'd be like, okay, so you're looking out the window. And she's like, what am I looking at? He's like, don't worry, just turn and look something. Look like you're seeing something. And he wouldn't tell her what he was looking at because he could make it work. He didn't need her to do anything other than turn and look out the window, and then he would take care of the rest. And so I think that she was willing and able to go along with that style and being like, I got it. I'm just going to be in the room with Alfred Hitchcock and do my best to enjoy the ride. And I think Paul Newman was like, no, but what am I looking at? Because I am not going to participate in this kind of bullshit.
Yeah, that was something that I gleaned too in some of the reading that I did, that he was all, as you said, what's the meaning of this? And she was just like, yeah, just tell me what you want me to do. And okay, because that's what I'm here for.
I have a little bit of a hot take, but I don't understand Paul Newman's thing just based on watching this movie.
Yeah, well,
Paul Newman's thing?
Right. Like, what's the thing? What do people want from Paul Newman? You know what I mean? Because again, I've seen this and nothing else. So
almost every other movie.
Okay. So this is a genuine outlier, is what you're saying. Okay.
In a lot of ways, I hadn't really thought about it. But
why is this man on a sauce bottle at the store? There's a reason here. I mean,
because he was if you want a list of movies of Paul Newman's to see, my top 3 would be Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Cool Hand Luke, and the prequel to the pool movie that he did with
Hustler.
Those are there's another one that he did with Joanne Woodward, and for the life of me I can't pull it, but Hot Summer,
Long Hot Summer.
Oh my gosh.
And then you've got The Sting and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The Sting is way too long, but
I have seen The Sting, but I don't even remember. I don't even remember it at this point.
But that was really more of an ensemble as opposed to him, but still, some of the early stuff is what made him Paul Newman.
You got to go watch Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah.
That's the Paul Newman that I think that's the one for you.
Okay.
Cool Hand Luke.
He's not much in this movie. I mean, like, by my approximation, like you mentioned, he's kind of sleepwalking through it. Like, Julie Andrews is the one who shows up big time in a lot of ways. Like, she's the more interesting character in this movie. He's just kind of there. Like, I get what he's doing. I get what the expectation of the character is, but what she's doing is more interesting because she seems to be, and again, like both of y'all, I found and read the same things. She seemed to get what Hitchcock wanted, and he didn't really want to deal with it, which I get, but you should not let that get in the way of a performance. Now, maybe on the page, this character is just kind of like this, but him being detached, this isn't the kind of character that can pull off being detached, because that's kind of not the point of the character.
Well, and I think it's interesting because they were all of them, huge stars. Paul Newman, Julie Andrews, and Hitchcock. Right. This was his 50th film. He was at this point considered the greatest film director in America, probably the world.
Right.
And yet, I think they basically said, you have to make this film with these 2 actors. It doesn't sound like that it was a lot of choice for him. He didn't get his first choices. And so there's a feeling that even Hitchcock, this isn't Hitchcock at his best. This is Hitchcock. He's allowing people to walk through some of those scenes.
Well, yeah, that's the weird part. And I think he, there was stuff he cared about, and then stuff that he clearly was like, yeah, I'm not gonna. But is it worth fighting with Paul Newman over is the question.
Well, and it's so interesting because I think Paul Newman is such a different kind of actor at that point. He was not of the classic actor. He was coming up he's a very naturalistic actor. He's very much, I don't know if he was method, but he might as well have been. So he wanted to truly understand what he was doing. And Alfred Hitchcock did not want to have those conversations. And so I would, my guess is that the blame could be settled on both shoulders there. And even with Julie Andrews, as great as she is, you couldn't tell me what she's thinking in any scene.
No.
No. But she's just gamely doing her best to deliver the performance her director wants. She had 2 giant movies under her belt. Paul Newman had been around. He had built that career. I mean, Hustler was probably one of his big breakouts, but Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, actually, there's so many. He had done so many films that, it is sort of a shame that you wouldn't go as a director. I got Paul Newman. Let me see if I can make Paul Newman shine let me see if I can shoehorn Paul Newman into this. But I think Hitchcock at that point, again, was also like, this is my 50th film. I'm not going to shoehorn. I'm going to do what I want to do. And if you're not going to play in my sandbox, you can just stand there and look like you don't know what you're doing.
This was also the stage in Paul Newman's career where he was, I think, at the beginning stages of going off and doing a lot of independent films himself. So yes, he still starred in things like Butch Cassidy and The Sting, but he was moving away from being the movie star and really was trying to make a name for himself as a director and as more of an actor, in quotes, if you will. And so, yeah, he was at a totally different point in his career than Julie Andrews was.
And he was closer to, Julie Andrews is in many ways kind of one of the last of the classic Hollywood actresses, even though she's, been amazing. She's still amazing, right? But Paul Newman was of the he was basically wanted to go into that 60s new wave. Like, even though he didn't necessarily go all the way into it, he, like Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid is a movie about sending up Westerns. It's about breaking the model. And so much of, I think that was what he was interested in, is a little more revolutionary in what he was looking for.
Well, and that's the thing about his performance in this movie. It's like, I can see that. I see that version of this actor. But here it's just, anytime it's just him in a scene, it's kind of like poke him with the stick and hope he does more. Because it's like, it's just so kind of downplayed. Which
the
again,
three scenes that you can remember.
Yeah, are when he kind of goes big, really.
Right. Is on the plane when he comes up to her and says, turn around and go back, and then does nothing else, right? And then the incredible
the set piece
murder,
of the movie.
The set piece of the movie is the incredible murder scene. And then with the professor, when he's, because again, it feels like stuff that worked for him to play, right? It was both physical and it was something an actor could really grasp onto. Like, okay, here's what you want, here's what you need, here's what is your obstacle. And every other time, I think he was probably being told, well, just stand there and then turn and look at her.
Right.
But he doesn't know how to do that, because that doesn't feed to his strength.
I mean, it is method, right? It's totally method acting. It's just, I don't know, he wouldn't call it that, right? Paul Newman wouldn't call it method acting. He would just call it acting, which I think is like, the sense I get of
it method.
I mean, he seems too cool to call it method. You know what I mean? Like,
I will say, and perhaps as often happens with me, when an actor or performer has built up a certain amount of goodwill or persona, I thought he was great in this movie. I thoroughly enjoyed watching him in this movie. I loved the two of them together. And I bought everything he was selling or underselling or not selling. I was right there with him taking the ride. Perhaps part of that too was growing up as a child of the Cold War and the whole evil East Berlin versus, heroic West Berlin of it all, and the whole Iron Curtain of it all, and the idea that there was this inherent danger in what he was doing, in what was happening, real danger. It wasn't like some sort of made up danger that somebody really could die. They didn't, the meanies on the other side of the wall didn't care, and they would kill just about anybody if they felt like it. But so anyway, when there's a performer that I really like, when I see them in something, I'm very forgiving, I guess, about whatever is happening. I can't tell you how many times I've seen television shows or movies where an actor that I really like is in it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go see this, even though maybe it's not so great, because I love that person, and I'm going.
Oh, I could watch Paul Newman all day long. I mean, but this is not peak Paul Newman. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean, again, same with, this is not peak Hitchcock.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not even peak Julie Andrews, though she's the one that I think is working the hardest in this movie to try to make it work. And I think you can tell, because you almost can't take her eyes off her in every scene that she's in. And again, I think with Paul Newman, it just wasn't the right fit. It wasn't the right fit between him and Alfred Hitchcock, and so it's so clearly a struggle. But he's still like beautiful to look at. They made sure that they took his shirt off and had beautiful ladies staring at him. So but I think that it is very interesting. It's a very interesting film to watch because of the history, right? It really does. And I came a little bit behind Sharon, but I still remember that East Berlin, West Berlin, which doesn't, that conflict doesn't exist anymore. It's gone, right? So,
especially at a time when there was a clear good guy and a clear bad guy. there was no ambiguity there about who was on which side of that equation. Like now, where
ambiguity?
Yeah, exactly.
Although I thought it was actually pretty interesting how it was sort of like, for the communists, they were just communists, right? So they were just like, we're just trying to do our thing. And if we can get you to come over and join our party, we're into that. And if you don't, yeah, we'll kill you. But that's only because they'd go back and give our secrets away, right? So I thought that it actually was a little less evil communist than I thought it was going to be. Because I liked all the characters in there, and because we saw so many characters in East Berlin that were clearly agents or undercover people who were revolutionaries within East Berlin. So you're like, oh, well, there's plenty of people. There's a whole entire busload of people.
And I actually had forgotten that for all intents and purposes, Julie Andrews and Paul Newman were the only Westerners in this movie, that everybody else was a non-Westerner, every other character, if you will, except for the guy out of the farm, but I'd forgotten about him too. So, I did not remember that. It's been a long time since I've seen this.
Yeah, the farm sequence, the bus sequence, those are pretty awesome.
Well, I mean, I think that the movie kind of feels like the whole point of the movie is the murder scene on the farm. I know that Hitchcock said he wanted to make sure you understood how long it takes for someone to die, which is great. I mean, I get it. Sure, that's fine. But that point in the movie comes very early on, and it never gets back to that point. And I'm not saying it had to get back to that point in terms of like watching someone be slow murdered on screen, but I kind of wish the movie felt like there was a little bit of it kind of fell off really quick after that point. And that's such a high point in the movie that I wish it had maybe come later in the movie. I don't know. It's just, I wish it wasn't the sole high point is what it feels like. Because yes, there are some points towards the second, kind of this end of the second act, the beginning of the third act that are kind of interesting, but it kind of feels like that one scene is the entire movie in a way. It gets lost in that one scene.
I thought the whole escape sequence was really intense as they're trying to get out.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's
just, for me, that felt like it was good, but there was a moment where I was like, this is getting a little, and then a little, not a whole lot, but I felt like if they had done it one more time, because like the baskets was like, that's the last straw. You can't do anything past this. Okay, fine. But I mean, effectively, the end of the second act and the entire third act of the movie is them on the run. I mean, pretty much. They never stop moving. And I mean, there were some pretty high tension moments, especially when they're at the post office and then when they're at the play. Like, those are pretty good moments. And the way that they're edited together is, I think, really interesting. And it helps ratchet up the tension for sure.
Well, and I think, and you probably read this too, that Hitchcock was also trying to he figured he couldn't out Bond at the time. Bond films were really big. So he wanted to kind of do an anti-Bond in terms of, it not being, a person who was going to, suavely smooth their way out of was used to being spy man, right? The wonderkind spy man. And so I think that's very interesting in what audience expectations were at the time. I mean, this was a time when movies meant more. They just did. They weren't, they were harder to make. A Hitchcock movie was a big deal. A Paul Newman was they were harder to see, but it was also, they weren't necessarily harder to see. They were just an event, right? It was an event.
Harder to re-see. How's that? Harder to re-watch, right? You got to see it once. And if you wanted to see it again, you literally went to the movie theater. Or like you said, catch it on TV.
You had your TV guide and kept a shot on. Right?
Exactly. Like the ability to just sit down and click this movie on and click this movie off and pause it at any point. That has probably allowed me to not watch as many Hitchcock movies because I can watch literally anything else as well. At one point, it was just this for this kind of movie. And if you wanted to watch the best kind of this kind of movie, you would watch a Hitchcock film, I'm assuming. I mean, again, there are other names that would come up, but Hitchcock is a kind of director of a certain kind of movie that was his thing forever. Essentially, that's what he's known for.
It was also a time, though, when movies would stay in a theater for much longer. This is an extreme example, but Star Wars stayed in the theater a year after it was released. movies tended to stay for weeks and weeks, if not months, if they were doing well enough. But you still had to get out of your house, go to the theater and buy a ticket. And you could certainly, but you also could sit through it 4 times if you wanted to, a lot of times if in a lot of theaters back then, if you had an inclination to watch it over and over again. But yeah, it was a different time for consuming this kind of content. That's for sure.
Yeah, and if you were a crazy girl, in Georgia who really wanted to see a lot of films, sometimes you might slip into another movie theater and watch another film for the same price without going outside and buying another ticket. You might just spend all afternoon doing that.
The dawn of the multiplex made that sort of thing doable. Absolutely.
Susan began the downfall of the film industry right there in Georgia, sneaking into extra movies. I mean, that's the thing, though. It's like taking it for granted. Nobody even thinks about it anymore. And again, that for me is probably the excuse I'll go with in terms of why I haven't seen these movies, just because there's plenty of other things to watch at this point. Plenty of things. And I'm not saying that Hitchcock's movies don't have any value in this day and age. I know that they do without even having to watch them because they're still being mentioned in certain conversations all the time. Again, I was just in LA. We were at a podcast thing. I went to Universal Studios and they still talk about Hitchcock at the Universal Studios tram tour. Still talk about Hitchcock in 2024. They could stop talking about it. And why wouldn't they keep talking about it? Again, in a lot of ways, Spielberg and Hitchcock overlapped each other for just a moment, but then Spielberg picked up the mantle that Hitchcock had, which is a director who makes movies that you're going to see. At least for a while, people were seeing it because he was the one directing those movies. And Hitchcock is the same thing. People saw it because it was a Hitchcock movie. That's the way it works. The fact that he's in all of his movies, the fact that he's on the post. No other directors are on the posters for their movies. That's not.
He's in the trailer for this movie.
Yeah,
it's like as much Alfred, they literally are showing this, picture of Alfred Hitchcock where they're like, Alfred Hitchcock does this and Alfred Hitchcock does that. Oh yeah, Julie Andrews and Paul Newman, but Alfred Hitchcock, right?
You could be confused to think Alfred Hitchcock is in the movies as the main actor. Like the way he's treated, the fanfare with which he approaches is, you can't get out of the way of it with Hitchcock. That's the thing.
There's just, and they're not, just as there aren't that kind of movie star anymore, there's not that kind of filmmaker anymore. They may become known and you may have your big giant filmmakers, but they're not known the same way. There is just, Hitchcock had a lot of control and a lot of power. And if, it just represented something. Again, I think Spielberg may be the last filmmaker, maybe Scorsese, but in smaller degrees. There's just sort of nothing like the Alfred Hitchcock. There almost wasn't anything like it then, but now there's just nothing like it. I don't know who.
Did either of you pick up or pick up his Hitchcock's cameo in this?
I didn't.
I didn't either until I read about it later, and then I had to go back and find it.
Is it on the bus?
Oh my gosh, no, it's early. Now, what I did pick up is it's in the hotel in Copenhagen. I think in Copenhagen, they're walking in, and you hear the Alfred Hitchcock theme playing. He is sitting on a couch, kind of with his back to the camera. He's slightly in profile, and he's got a toddler on his lap. Yeah. But I didn't catch it.
8 minutes and 19 seconds.
Yeah. I caught the music, but I wasn't looking for him. I forgot to look for him.
I just assumed that he would be later in the movie for some reason. And which doesn't make sense because I think he was often early in the movie. I don't know. Anyway, this is the problem. I should have. If we'd done this interview in 1992, I would have been a very big Hitchcock expert. Yeah. Because this is definitely somebody that I went down the rabbit hole of. Right. This is a person I want. Because you'd be like, you get an overview of film history in film school, and you get some highlights of all the stuff. But then to get somebody's full, so I did a full Jimmy Stewart, I did a full Hitchcock, a lot of Truffaut for me. So, but it's pretty amazing how even if you don't know it, you know it. Like, and that's because of The Simpsons, and that's because of,
literally with me.
Literally, yeah. I mean, The Simpsons is responsible for a lot of film history knowledge being passed on to the next generation.
Yeah. I mean, they have a Hitchcock cameo in the episode that they do all the Hitchcock references. A Streetcar Named Marge, I believe, in like the first or second season. Yeah. I mean, they have a bunch of Hitchcock. They have him in there. They have the thing with the babies that are meant to be the birds, but the pacifiers. I mean, again, that was my exposure to Hitchcock more than anything else, more than having ever seen the movies, for sure. And then again, I don't know if I saw Phantom of the Paradise before or after I saw Psycho, but De Palma does his own Hitchcock thing in Phantom of the Paradise. I mean, some would bristle at it, but Brian De Palma probably is who picked up exactly what Hitchcock was doing.
Yeah,
Spielberg was at that same level of director, but De Palma, I think, is the person who picks up the mantle for Hitchcock in terms of being known as that kind of film director. I think he might hate or like that, and I think a lot of other film watchers might hate or like that statement, but I don't think it's untrue either way.
Well, who are the filmmakers of today? Like
Chris Nolan?
Is he?
Yeah,
I mean, I guess. I don't like his movies, but I know people do. Tarantino, another one. Again,
he's an old guard. These are old guards now. Tarantino is
Greta Gerwig. Does that count?
Greta Gerwig, yeah. But again, she's not given quite the due, right?
No. I'll be glad when she wins for something other than Barbie that's better than Barbie. Not saying Barbie was bad, but we all know the other things Greta Gerwig has directed were really good too.
I would put Barbie as the best of her.
Really? Interesting. I mean, I don't think you can't make a case for it. Let's put it that way.
I can't.
No, I'm not saying I don't think you can't, is my point. Like, I think you can make a case for Barbie being her best movie, 100%.
I haven't seen all the movies she's directed, but I was really not a fan of
Lady Bird?
Thank you. Couldn't remember what it was called.
Which I totally also get that as well.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know if they're
it's a different kind of world, because the kind of movies that the Hitchcocks, they're not really being made. There are the scope of the types of movies that are made today is much narrower. It's either going to be some sort of big blockbuster IP kind of movie. And listen, I like a lot of those movies. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that has sucked up a lot of the oxygen, and I don't really see any true successors to Hitchcock coming out of that. Or it's going to be, much smaller movies like Lady Bird or Nomadland or Parasite
Peele?
Or,
What about Jordan Peele?
Jordan Peele yeah. I mean, does he get to make another movie? Is he making another movie?
Yeah, it comes out in like December.
All right.
And it's like Jordan Peele's new movie. I mean,
Jordan Peele definitely. Yeah, all right.
I mean, Jordan Peele's. Okay. I mean, again, I watched that Twilight Zone. Yeah, well.
I mean, again,
yes, James Cameron. Yes, but James Cameron also thinks James Cameron deserves to be mentioned. I like Catherine Bigelow a lot more if we're having that conversation, because at least she makes interesting movies, not just the same thing over and over.
So I would put Catherine Bigelow. Again, none of them are near a Hitchcock, but in terms of
even Spielberg is really
right. And Spielberg, again, I'm also going to put in a little bit of the old guard. Right?
Oh, he's totally old. If you're making movies in the 70s, you're part of the old guard.
So we
just
have
by definition.
Bigelow. We have Tarantino. We have Christopher Nolan. I'll allow it.
Robert Rodriguez, Kevin Smith. I mean, these are people that they don't make that many movies. I mean,
so I don't think you can.
But I don't know, like that. But in my mind, it makes it like an event when their movie comes out. Like Tarantino Tarantino is prolific, but he doesn't have 30 movies. Not like Soderbergh. Like Tarantino, Scorsese, Spielberg, like they make movies infrequently now. So I think that's where the elevation is just by the fact that they don't work as much as they used to. But I would agree with you. They probably don't deserve to be mentioned in the same term as Hitchcock, because Hitchcock made 50 movies. This is the 50th movie. I know he made at least 50 because this is the 50th movie is my point. Like there's a different kind of prolific we're talking about here. He's prolific because of the output. They're prolific because of, I don't know.
I guess we, in terms of this exercise, are we talking about numbers? Are we talking about how most people, know that name, even if they haven't seen all of the movies. I mean, because I think there's a difference. I think more people have heard of Kevin Smith, perhaps, and have seen all of his movies than perhaps you might think. But I don't know how many people would know who Catherine Bigelow is if you mention her name. Not saying that she's, I mean, I get it.
I think that's a little bit different because Kevin Smith is out there as a personality.
Right. Exactly.
You know him as a personality.
Yes. That was intentional, right? I mean, that was kind of part of it. Hitchcock was out there as a personality too. Part of it was intentional, right? Mm-hmm. He's in his own movie. I mean, Kevin Smith kind of copped the Hitchcock thing. Kevin Smith is in almost all of his own movies.
Yeah, but he's actually.
So I mean, again, like he did the Hitchcock thing. In a lot of ways, he took Hitchcock's idea and ran even further with it, right? Like, I'll be a main character in one of these movies.
Paul Feig, because again, he has done a lot of different kinds of movies, but they all have a particular. You could kind of go, oh yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still there, but he was there for a while.
Judd Apatow.
Judd Apatow. Yeah. But it's not the same.
No, it's really not.
If your name is being used as a verb, like Hitchcockian, or I guess that's an adjective, but like Spielbergian, like there's not like, look, nobody's saying George Lucas directed. Like nobody sits and says George Lucas was a great director.
Well, there's not direct that much. So.
Well, that's my point. Like, but again, like there's also the thing of like, how do we make sure
Tarantino? You like there's an expectation with the Tarantino movie. You can go out and go, I want this to be filmed like Tarantino. And many people would know what you were talking about.
I think Quentin Tarantino might be as well. Maybe what if it's like Darren Aronofsky? I mean, I don't know. That's pretty high up there, I feel like.
But that gets back to, notoriety and familiarity with the name. Versus the fact that Aronofsky has made a lot of movies, but probably most people have not heard of them or heard of him. It's a different world.
Some of these things are just like there was never going to be as much of a thing for Hitchcock being this big in pop culture if he was existing now. Right. It would be as hard for him to be, again, like some of this is you just right place, right time, not enough things existing in that world. Like how many content creators 10 years ago that were taking advantage of YouTube would be lost in the shuffle now if they were trying to make YouTube. Same thing. When you don't have as big of a hose that you're drinking from, everything matters. Now it's like, there's fucking a million things, including just going and watching Hitchcock's movies one after another because I want to. Like that was not a thing in 1966, and people didn't even think it ever would be. To tell them, oh, you can pause it and rewind it and watch it over, and you don't even have to have a physical thing. Like, talk about fucking magic. Like, Jesus.
And so having film knowledge at that point was really, it took a lot to be able to access the films, right?
You had to go read a book in the library. Like that's, I mean, Richard talks about it on his shows. Mike assigns it on his shows. Like books about movies were the way you get that information. Not everybody could go on Google and Wikipedia and read everything that's been condensed down from all of those sources so that it's a manageable stream of things. I mean, we really are just living in a time right now where, it's nice that we can just turn these movies on, have a conversation, and then turn them off. Like, there's nothing in terms of effort being put in. The effort is very minimal at this point.
And your reaction when you realize that something you decide you want to watch, or you're like, I can't watch this. It's not available somewhere.
Right.
This is wrong. How is this possible? Right. It's, there's an expectation that everything is available and it's not.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be curious how many Hitchcock movies are available. I mean, maybe the Criterion Channel. I mean, like I'm trying to think who would have them all, or maybe they're all on Netflix. I don't know.
I gotta guess a lot of Criterion, right? Because that's the other thing. Like Hitchcock's movies are important, and Criterion and Kino Lorber, they tend to be where those kinds of movies come out.
So let's go back and talk about the movie.
Yeah, the movies. I mean, again, we're
doing two different podcasts today, but that's great.
Right.
I want to talk about that murder scene. I want to talk about that farm.
Yes, let's talk about the murder scene. Well, that was off-putting.
And there's a couple of things. It is still astonishing to me that Julie Andrews was sleeping out of wedlock with the character that Paul Newman is playing. And I mean, let's just point out, she's clearly a scientist, but really she's his assistant.
Right.
That's what she is called throughout. This is the scientist and my assistant. which is the role that women got to play in the 60s, even if they were scientists.
And they never define what kind of credentials, if any, she actually has.
She's knows just Paul Newman,
the assistant.
She's sleeping with Paul Newman.
Those are her credentials, apparently.
With her boss, right?
Right.
So, and it's Julie Andrews. It's Maria. She's a nun, for God's sake. So it's very interesting that then this early on in the movie, and I think one of the things that might be early on in the movie is it really does establish not only the threat of violence, but that Paul Newman's character has gotten in over his head. And what we've seen is Paul Newman and this random woman at the farmhouse murder a man slowly, inefficiently, and desperately. And that, again, for audiences in 1966, people had to have time to get through the rest of the movie to just be like the ramifications of that, right? Like, it wasn't cool. It wasn't stylish. It was brutal and scary and a presentation of sort of spy world that we had not seen a lot of in popular culture.
Tossing into a bathtub a toaster is definitely this is not that. When I think of the spy stuff at the time, we're talking like Goldfinger with James Bond and the, haha, shocking. Like, that's not this. That is pretty far from this in a very, very intentional way. I think I was very put off by the scene, but I had to watch it a couple times because I was like,
what put you off?
I mean, everything about it. I mean, again, like the length at which it takes to do that and the fact that that is part of the intent behind making the scene that long is to, like you said, it's an anti-spy movie because this is the reality. It's not just you toss a electric item into a bathtub with someone and they just, boom, they're dead. That's not how this works. And I appreciate that was kind of the point of the scene.
And it does raise the stakes for the rest of the movie.
Right.
You are sitting up a little bit more after that, for sure, I think, as an audience member. And what's interesting is but there's not as much humor in this. I know we just talked about the president, but like there's a lot of humor in some of the other Hitchcock films. The dry humor, it's not quite the shocking. It's not a James Bond humor, but right. There's a lot of more character going on in other Hitchcock movies than there's going on here. This one feels very straightforward in a lot of ways. And which is, I think, in some ways why sometimes the tension just sort of dissipates. It should maintain. I think that's one of the things that frustrated me. It's like from that moment on, you shouldn't ever be off your seat.
Right.
And it does, even though they're kind of on the run, they're kind of not. And then they have the talk, and then she thinks he's going to, I did love the scene in the hotel room where she's like trying to convince him to leave, and it was a very unusually shot Hitchcock scene because it was shot so far away.
Where did that fall? Where did that particular one fall in the movie?
It comes after. It's when they're in she knows he's defecting, but she's decided to go. I think it's the moment she's like, I'm going to go back and I want you to come with me.
Ah, okay.
And so
she changes. It's after she changes her mind after saying, okay, I'm going to stick around. And then she realizes I can't do this.
Yeah, this is and it's just an interesting, like, on one hand, there's tension in that scene. And on the other hand, because it's sort of his back is to her. And yeah, I think it's one where, you kind of want to break that down as a filmmaker. You're like, okay, is this working or is this not working? Is this working in this movie at this point? Or is it actually deflating some of the tension because you're not letting these two people who have a lot of stake in this relationship act like that in the scene? And it's never very clear that he likes her very much. Like,
I was about to say the two of them together, like it's not that they're at each other's throats, but like they don't have as much genuine chemistry as I would have thought. She feels like she's putting in the effort with him, and he's just Paul Newman, I guess.
Well, when you think of Sound of Music, which we just watched, and you think of Von Trapp and Maria, Captain Von Trapp, and you're like, he didn't even like her
Right.
And there's so much chemistry. You're so in love with the two of them. You want them together. I'm not sure I have a stake in, I'm kind of like, girl, get out, right? Like he didn't even tell you why to leave. He just yelled at you.
But until he tells her what's going on, he's playing a part, and she's going around going, what the fuck is going on here? And I don't understand any of this. And he's just over in the corner going, I thinking, I can't tell you because they might kill you if I tell you. And he doesn't tell her until he absolutely has to, or feels he absolutely has to. So there's different things going on there, I think, for me.
And he's way in over his head too. Like
he's way in over his head.
He didn't even tell the U.S. government what he was doing. Like
right.
If I'm Julie Andrews, I'm like, are you mental, motherfucker? Like, what are you? Because if he's going to do any of what he's doing, why wouldn't he have the help of the U.S. government? Like, it makes very little sense why someone who's like a top U.S. scientist wouldn't just be like, hey, U.S. government, I could theoretically defect, get the information, and then you guys could help me get it. Feels a little contrived. And I'm sure that Hitchcock's movies have levels of contrivance to them. It's just like, I don't necessarily think I would have asked that question if you hadn't pointed that out. So maybe next time, just don't point it out. And I won't necessarily think, oh, why didn't you work with the U.S. government? Like, you shouldn't bring that up in the movie and hang a lantern on it. Like, that's not great.
Well, and you're hanging a lot of, it's odd. If his original plan had worked, he would have just left her in Copenhagen.
No,
right.
She was not supposed to come.
Right. No, but
she was supposed to stay in the States, and she decided she was going to come on her own.
Right. And they talk about that while they're in bed, and you're just spending the whole scene going, wait, Julie Andrews is in bed with Paul Newman and they're not married. And I really don't know what to think. But yes, they were doing some exposition about how, but then it was also like, oh, because we're going to get married, and of course I should be here. And then he's like, of course. But then, yes, she wasn't supposed to be there, but now that she was there, he didn't seem to change his plan at all.
No.
I'll take his side and say, because his plan was to leave her behind. He was just going to sneak off. She'd be left behind without any information or knowledge that could get her in trouble with either the East Berlin or with the American government, because she doesn't know anything.
Right.
Yes, but if I really loved Julie Andrews, I would be like, I am risking my entire relationship for this, because if I'm Julie Andrews, I'm Julie Andrews. I'm like, this does not get left behind for 2 to 3 months with no explanation, because that's about 1,000 red flags, even in the 60s.
Well, that's what I mean.
So,
like, he's kind of nuts is my point. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. He seems kind of, to me, like the character in the movie that I'm like, a lot of this could have been avoided if you had just done what any one of us would have done, which is talk to the U.S. government. Because who are you giving the information to anyways? I get that he doesn't like the U.S. government because they hinted like they kind of shelved one of his projects, but to go and effectively do this, like, hey, it's a bit of a stretch, a bit of a jump. You're really that mad, I guess. All right.
But I will give him, well, I don't want to give him, it's not credit exactly, but this was 1966. And as evidenced by the fact that Julie Andrews played his assistant, men didn't explain themselves to women.
Right.
They just did their thing, and the women were expected to just go along with it. And I'm sure he fully expected, if she had stayed behind and if he had left for a couple months, he'd get a hero's welcome when he came back, when he explained to her what was going on. I'm not saying it's a good thing.
Or he'd be dead or stuck behind the iron curtain.
Right.
But,
plausible deniability on her part.
Exactly.
Listen, there's an element to Hitchcock films that are very stylized, that are very much leaps of faith.
Shakespearean levels of tragedy, right? Like, yeah.
And
coincidences, all kinds of nutsoid stuff. Like, Psycho has that. Like, again, like I've seen Psycho. Like, it has some of those things in there where it's like, this is a contrivance in anyone else's film. But here, it's kind of part of it. It's just part of it.
Well, and that was the style. That was very much the style of the time. That was very much happening in theater, where it was presentational. It was, here is this scenario we're painting for you, and just go with us. And you would. And you're like, yes, okay, that's the scenario, that's the world, as long as you suddenly, and it was very much not method. And I'm Paul Newman, you're right. I think he was method. I think he literally was an originator of method, but then he kind of shifted.
These movies don't feel like the characters matter as much as what the characters are doing matters. And like, that's fine. Like, that is a way of making movies that would clash with someone like Paul Newman. Because I'm sure Alfred Hitchcock just went, I don't fucking care why your character's doing this. Your character just does it. It's on the page. Do it. So yeah, I get it. But
and painting the picture, literally painting a picture with light, and this is what I'm trying. I want to make the audience scared here and happy there, and release the tension here, and make them feel this there. And it had very little to do with actors.
Right. I will do it in post-pro. Is like, okay, sure. But yeah, that probably rankles someone like Paul Newman pretty hard. He's like, I want to act. Let me act. Please, I want to act. It's like, I don't really care what you want.
And most of the movies of Paul Newman's that I've seen, as I'm sitting here thinking about it now, they've been character driven. They've not been this sort of actiony, let's get from point A to point B. It was about what the character was thinking, feeling in this world that they were living in.
We'll hand Luke as a character study, right?
Sometimes nothing can be a real cool hand, Chris.
Oh, cool. I mean, I get it. That I get. Okay.
It's got a story, but it isn't very much.
It's like the antithesis of this movie, essentially, is what you're saying. The plot is a fine-tuned machine that is expected to, Rube Goldberg itself to the end. I mean, that's a thriller, right? Like, the characters in thrillers don't necessarily matter. We didn't mention Rian Johnson and his movies, but I feel like that is similar in this case to like Rian Johnson. The expectation his movies are meant to be like, well-oiled watches. This is more of a thing in literature than it is in film. Like now, I think like we've really seen the rise of like thrillers and those kinds of books taking the place of movies because like they're cheaper. You can do a lot more in the medium. And God, how many writers out there are just cranking out mystery thrillers once or twice a year, like plenty of authors. And they're really good too. Not poo-pooing them, but like the literary kind of scope seems to be where this kind of genre is now always being represented
Well, and it's so funny because I actually feel like Glass Onion and Knives Out, speaking, is it Ryan? Is that how you pronounce it? Rian Johnson. Those are very old school movies.
Yep.
They have a lot of new school flair, but they're just an old-fashioned whodunit. And it's so funny that we went and saw Knives Out, and and Rich walked out very unhappy, and I walked out going, "Well, okay, that was kind of a little bit of a twisted thing." And in the end, and our kids were like, "This is the greatest movie that's ever been in the world," and they were so thrilled with it. And we're like, "But it was like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Right. It was like a Sherlock Holmes movie, only like, a little bit fancier. And then, oops, it turns out that there's, that the bad guy was the white guy. But, it's, which, is good. But it is very funny that there is, I think, a desire for this kind of beautifully built box.
Right? Yeah.
Of a movie. I mean, I think that we like those. I think that a good story well told is still something that works. And I think a lot of people forget it, mostly our studio system. But so I mean, but it is sort of funny. I could see I would love to see a resurgence of movies coming back to, kind of beautifully built boxes. I'm a little sad that sort of Knives Out is, becoming a franchise because it'll just become less and less.
And live long enough to become the thing it wasn't intended to be.
I'm willing to hold out hope that it will continue to entertain and surprise. I when it comes to mysteries in general, I love a mystery that keeps me guessing until the end. And both of those movies did. There were clues along the way that I missed or just kind of glommed over and got distracted by the shiny over here, which is the intent. And perhaps the fact that Rian Johnson isn't having to crank out 2 of these a year like he would have had to back in Hitchcock's day, because that's how quickly they were making things. Maybe we'll see something good. I don't even know if he's already looking at doing another one. I hope so, if it's as good as the first two, because I did thoroughly enjoy both of them.
I was gonna say the thing that I'm looking forward to is a book I read a couple years ago. That was again one of these like very fine-tuned things, which was the Thursday Murder Club, which was a really good book, and it was about a bunch of again, this is the way it's essentially pitched. It's a bunch of pensioners who solve a murder in their essentially like elderly care home, but it's that same thing of like they just don't make stories like this anymore. They don't do this thing anymore, and of course it's being adapted into a movie by, of all people, Steven Spielberg's production company. So I think what's interesting is we are seeing that another thing we didn't mention, but I think it would stand to reason, it's similar in scope and in vein to these Hitchcock movies. Kenneth Branagh keeps releasing these Poirot movies that are very similar.
Yes.
Maybe even too on the nose. Like some of the stuff in that first one, I was like, man, this is like really, really on the nose. But I think that some directors are still carrying the torch for these kinds of movies, but this is now, similarly to Westerns, just not a thing that's made as much as it used to be. Similarly to musicals and a lot of the things we've talked about, really. But it's not a bad...
I think Kenneth Branagh was a really good point. He's not of the name.
No.
But a Kenneth Branagh film, you know what that means. And it's not just the Perot stuff. I mean, if you go back to Frankenstein and
Hamlet.
Well, and Much
Ado. I loved his Much Ado. And the Dead Again, which was also kind of a...
Dead Again was a little bit of an outlier, but a little bit of a thriller.
Yeah.
They even roped him into the MCU somehow and had him direct the first Thor movie, which shocking in and of itself.
And he was in the Harry Potter franchise too.
Yeah, as the best character in the Harry Potter franchise, bar none. But I think he's an interesting example. But again, it's also interesting that I don't know, I'm assuming there's another Poirot movie that will come out and he's kind of keeping this kind of movie alive. But yeah, if Rian Johnson wants to do another Knives Out, sure, it'll be successful. I was with Richard. I was not a fan of the first one, so I didn't even embark on the path to see the second one.
Neither did he. But the rest of our family went on Thanksgiving, and it was fantastic.
I get it. I know I am in the minority there for Glass Onion and Knives Out. I know that I am definitely in the minority because there would not have been a second one without the first one in that movie's particular case. So
yeah, and both nominated for writing, I think, in
original
Academy Award.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
as much
they
as
were
that
fun.
matters, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, they were great fun.
We know how much award shows matter, as they would say. Varying degrees of mattering, as I was gonna say. We take credit for the good ones and we distance ourselves from the other ones. Please now coming to the stage, little known podcaster Malcolm Gladwell. Oh yeah, never heard of that guy. Who?
Well, the Webbies are way more important.
They are.
Exactly.
They are. The Webbies are more important. The Webbies are, what is the word? They're more recognized by more people and have been for a longer time than something that's been around for like 2 years, 3 years, seemingly.
Listen, it's worth it. I wouldn't necessarily start you with this Hitchcock. If I'd known it was only your second Hitchcock, we probably would have started somewhere else. But this is definitely a worth seeing Hitchcock because it's sort of pedestrian Hitchcock. It's standard Hitchcock fare with slightly the wrong stars in it, but they're very interesting stars, so it's an interesting one.
Sharon?
I would say it's certainly not perhaps Hitchcock's best, but it's still a really fun, really good watch and a look in a very small way of the whole Cold War East versus West situation that is where all of this stems from, in the way that Michael is trying to get the information he needs, and sort of an everyman kind of character who is trying to find the information he needs to try to help his side. If you like Paul Newman, if you like Julie Andrews, and if you don't, why not? Definitely give it a watch.
And I'm just going to echo what they said more or less. If I wouldn't say that this is the best place to start for Hitchcock, but I'm also not going to be the person to ask what that best starting place is. I enjoyed it. I mean, nothing else. I enjoyed it. It was a fun movie and it was an interesting watch. And yeah, the big moment of the movie does stand out as a big moment, but I think that the movie for the most part, pretty good, pretty well directed. There's some great scenes of tension throughout. And I understand just by watching this movie why Hitchcock is who he is for a large group of people, if not to the cinematic landscape as a whole. So, however, there is one more piece of business we need to talk about before we end this show, and that's where people can go to vote for something that y'all's show is nominated for. So I'll turn it over to y'all so you can give the particulars on where people can go to vote for your show for the Webby Awards.
We are nominated for Best Indie Podcast at this year's Webby Awards. The 28th annual Webby Award nominees were just released, and you can vote for us for the People's Choice Award. So please do. You go to webbyawards.com, and then you're gonna look. It should be easy to go vote. But there's a lot of categories, so you can just search Webby Award podcast 80s TV Ladies, and you can probably find us. We'll soon have a link from our website, but we don't yet. So we might, even now, by the time you release this, we might have a link to the website, 80stvladies.com.
There are currently links on our social media, on our Facebook page, and on Instagram that will help you get right to where you can go to vote for us in the Best Indie Podcast category. Really appreciate any support.
And the link will be in the description for the podcast as well, because if you're listening to this show, you should be going and listening to their show and voting as well, because, hey, we were just at a podcast thing where we didn't win anything. So now that y'all are nominated, we can tell people to go and vote for something that we are part of. So yeah, the link is in the description below. Other than voting for the Webbies, where can people find what y'all work on?
80stvladies.com. It's 80stvladies.com. It looks back at female-driven television shows from the 1980s from a modern feminist perspective. Sometimes it's just Sharon and I bloviating, and sometimes it's we have very special guests on, from filmmakers to costumers to the stars of the shows. So join us and let us know your favorite 80s television show filled with ladies that we should cover.
And as for me, you can find this show and everything else over at weirdingwaymedia.com, where you can find the aforementioned 80s TV Ladies, The Projection Booth, Twisted and Uncorked, and a whole host of other shows that I have essentially nothing to do with, hosted by people that aren't me. So weirdingwaymedia.com is where you can go to check out all of that. Go ahead and also check in the description below to go and vote for the Webbies, because y'all are in second place as of right now, and I know we can get to first place. I know y'all can get to first place, and I just get to congratulate y'all. But yeah, that's where you can go to get all of those things done. There's only one thing you can't find over at weirdingwaymedia.com. That's Ranking on Bond, which I do with Susan's husband, Richard Haddam, the host of Richard Haddam's Paranormal Bookshelf, where we talk about James Bond movies once a month with our other host, the Projection Booth's Mike White. Y'all were on a recent episode that's not coming out for some time, but in the future, that will be a thing you can hear the five of us talking about. So until then, like, rate, and review the show wherever you get it. Susan and Sharon, thank you so much for joining me. Maybe the next time you guys are on an episode of the show, you'll be Webby Award winners. Who knows? Only you can help us there, folks. So like I said, go on over, check out the podcast description, go vote, and we'll catch you on the next episode.